Hello there, and welcome to the Time Machine with Trish and Mike. I'm Mike.
And I'm Trish.
And we're glad you're with us once again. We're back to our normal format this week. Hope you enjoyed last week's special U.S.-Canada episode celebrating Canada Day and Independence Day. Did you do anything? Did you have a good Canada Day, Trish?
I did. We spent it down in Drumheller, which is in southern Alberta. We were camping. So, home of dinosaurs.
Home of dinosaurs? Is that what you said?
Yeah, there's the Royal Tyrrell Museum there, which is a really famous institution where a lot of paleontologists, I guess they like curate the fossils, and it's a really big deposit of fossils in Alberta down in Drumheller.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah,
so
it's really cool.
This is like the spot in Canada to go for dinosaurs.
That spot. So if you actually look at a map from like millions of years ago, that part of Alberta used to be right by the ocean, or the ocean was up to that part in Alberta.
Oh, okay.
And so there was a lot of dinosaurs, I guess, that lived there at that time. And when they died, their remains were fossilized. And Drumheller now is it called the Badlands. So it's very much like a desert. And you would never, ever think that at one point in time you were at the bottom of the ocean. And so very drastically different landscape nowadays, but really interesting place. And like I said, they have the Royal Tyrrell Museum, which is, just a fantastic gem located here in Alberta that you can go and visit and see paleontologists really at work.
That's pretty neat that you have that there. Yeah.
My daughters very much enjoyed seeing the giant dinosaurs, all their skeletal remains all put up on display. So. Oh. And what did you do? Somebody had a nice birthday.
I did. Completed another revolution around the sun. Yeah. It was a little more, I guess, fun than last year's because, hashtag middle of a pandemic last year.
That's right.
But it was nice, kind of just a fun day. Didn't really do a whole lot because just getting people together is still a little bit of a challenge, especially when your birthday is around a major holiday. Because of course we have Independence Day.
Yep.
It's tricky because there are some years where like if it falls in the middle of the week, it's like, okay, it's kind of easier because people aren't out of town. But when your birthday falls on a holiday weekend, it's like,
Sorry, I'm out. Yeah. I have a friend whose birthday's on Canada Day. And I was like, man, that's so great. You have like fireworks every day on your birthday. He's like, it sucks. Like nobody celebrates my day. It's just Canada's day.
Like, having a birthday on Christmas or New Year's or something. It's just
not the same.
Yeah. But yeah. And you had a birthday a couple weeks ago. We didn't really get a chance to talk about that last week, but
yeah, it was pretty chill. Here in Alberta, you can have 20 people. Well, at the time when I had my birthday party, you could have 20 people outside.
Okay.
So there was just myself and 3 girlfriends, and we had, a barbecue and fire pit and drank wine and laughed and were silly. So it was good. I like that. Good. Being introverted, I don't like being around huge groups of people, and I don't like my birthday in general. So
good. Well, I'm glad that you had a good time. I had a good time. Yeah. You had a happy Canada Day. I had a happy Independence Day.
And everyone was safe and good.
Yes. Yeah. And speaking of safe and good, takes us to our first story for this week, and that was July 8th, 2011. Space Shuttle Atlantis launches to be the final mission of the U.S. Space Shuttle program.
The end of an era.
Yes, it really, really was. Here's what's interesting. So this flight was actually originally not scheduled to occur.
It's a bonus flight.
It was a bonus flight. So as we kind of discussed some point in one of the earlier episodes, the mission was STS-135. So this was the final mission. And it used the Space Shuttle Atlantis, as I mentioned. It was originally STS-335, which the numbering system, anything with a 3 is considered a contingency mission. So this was originally the contingency backup mission for STS-134, which was the last scheduled flight. So they weren't originally going to fly this mission, but so they actually had to go back and get funding to make this mission happen.
And funding for those kinds of things, it's not just, can I borrow a hundy?
Yeah, it's a little bit more than that. These things do cost a little bit. But they decided we need to go back up one more time, and they were able to take some more supplies to the International Space Station. Because after, we've discussed Columbia and Challenger tragedies, contingency plans were put in place. You had, backup teams on standby to go up and need be to rescue. So there was actually no contingency mission for this flight.
Oh, so if something went wrong, that was it.
Right. We're just going to leave you. We're just going to leave you in space. You're on your own. No. So since the other shuttles had been decommissioned, there was no rescue plan. So what they had devised, they would do. This crew for this mission was only 4 people, which was the smallest since like the early 80s when they were first launching people. So they determined what they would do if something happened, a Columbia situation where there was damage going up and we couldn't safely bring them back home on the shuttle. They were going to dock at the space station, the International Space Station, and over the next year, they would bring them home one at a time on the Soyuz spacecraft from Russia.
Okay, so you're planning on a quick trip to space, but they're like, FYI, you could theoretically be in there for a year.
Pretty much, yeah.
So make a plan on Earth before you get up there.
Exactly. So it's like you're gonna be up, and their mission wound up extending one day. They were launched on July 8th, and they landed on July 21st. So they did actually get to spend an extra day in space. So fun fact though about this mission, Doug Hurley was the pilot for this mission. Now, if that name sort of sounds a little familiar to you, it's because he was in the news about a year ago as he was the commander for the Crew Dragon Demo 2 SpaceX flight last summer, which was the first crewed space flight from American soil since he was the pilot on the last shuttle mission.
How cool is that? I remember watching that last year. How was that already a year ago?
Yeah, it's crazy that was a year. And I remember that happening. That was such a time where it's like we just kind of needed something positive to happen, like seriously, and that was pretty cool.
Yeah, I remember watching it with my girls, being just like, "This is really monumental."
Yeah, it was a good moment, and we, being here in Florida, space shuttle launches are a big thing. They're very memorable. They're great to watch them launch, especially at night. But the other thing is when they land, depending on the flight path, I think we've talked about this, you get these twin sonic booms as it passes over you, because, it's breaking the sound barrier.
Right.
And you literally will, hear this boom, boom. And if you live in Florida and you've heard them, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Like you literally can hear your house rumble.
Oh my goodness. So in the middle of the night, that would scare me.
It's good. They're fun. It'll wake you up in the middle of the night. In fact, when this last flight returned, it landed just before 6:00 in the morning. So it was a good one final wake up call from the. It
was like,
hey,
cock-a-doodle-doo.
I mean, it doesn't scare you once you know that they're coming. And so this one, the last space shuttle landed at 5:57 in the morning. So it was a good wake up call for everybody.
So maybe more startling than scared. It's like, oh, okay, I guess I'm up.
Yeah, but if you because we would occasionally get them at 2 in the morning sometimes, because that's just the way the orbits and everything works out, that they do land in the middle of the night sometimes. But yeah,
fun times. Some people have roosters. Floridians.
Mm-hmm.
Floridians have sonic booms.
Yes. Yes, we do. But yeah, it's crazy to think that's been 10 years now since the end of the space shuttle program. And it took a little while, but we're back in space again.
Yeah. So. It's very exciting to see what's going to happen with space.
Yeah, but the space shuttle program was over, and you've got a story about something else going over.
Yes, this is definitely not something you want to go over. July 9th, 1967, Roger Woodward is going to be the first person to survive going over Niagara Falls. So he's just a young boy. He's about 7 years old.
Oh dear.
I realized a lot of again, I guess Niagara Falls is a joint Canadian US tourist attraction. But I'm like, we got to definitely get to New York State because so many of our stories end up being about New York State.
I think that's because New York's such an iconic place. It's such a big place.
It's one of the first places really founded in your history, right? So it's older.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a lot of history there.
Yeah. So he's going to become part of this Niagara Falls folklore when he's swept over Horseshoe Falls and survives, which is actually quite rare. I love how he's one of the first ones to survive not being in a barrel. I'm like, when did this whole, I'm just going to go in a barrel and go over the falls become like a thing?
The only thing I can think is because a barrel is so protective of you, heavy on the sarcasm. The only thing I can think, though, is the barrel will help you float when you land.
I guess it's like self-contained. You can put some straw inside so you're cushioned.
Maybe, but you're still going to have an impact when you hit the water.
Definitely not something I want to do.
Yeah, but I mean, I the only benefit to the barrel that I can think of is buoyancy once you go over.
Flotation.
Right, but it's quite a trip.
It's also terrifying. You're just like locked inside a barrel. I don't know. The whole thing sounds really awful, but luckily this little boy survives. Between this and the cyclone, we have a list of things Trish will not do when she goes to New York. It's true. It's going to be like a bucket list of we're going to go to New York and what won't Trish do list.
Right. Some people have a bucket list and Trish has I ain't doing that list.
No way.
It's like I went to New York and all I got was this lousy t-shirt because I didn't do anything.
Because Trish is chicken shit. That's right. Well, really, who's going to...
I don't blame you on this one, by the way.
No, I don't think too many people are going to be wanting to do this, but it was meant to be an actual really fun day because they were celebrating his sister's 17th birthday, and it was going to be his first ever boat ride. So like the poor kid had never been on a boat before, right? And their family friend, a man by the name of Rick Honeycutt, said, "Hey, I'll take the kids out onto the river, the Niagara River." And his mom was like, "Okay, but on one condition, he has to wear a life jacket because the little boy couldn't swim." Again, why do we have stories about people who are going to go off on boat rides and don't know how to swim?
Well, in his defense, he's a kid. He probably hasn't learned yet. But that's where the uncle should have been a little more responsible.
Right. So July 9th, 1960, this 12-foot aluminum boat sets out down the river, and they start to approach what's known as the Grand Island Bridge on the U.S. side. And to local boaters, this is where you would stop, right? It's kind of the unofficial
don't go past here. Yeah.
Yeah, because then you risk the strength of the river really pulling you. So the family friend is trying to make it a memorable boat ride, and he lets the little boy Roger steer for a little while. And as the currents grow stronger, though, as he's steering, the propeller ends up hitting a rock. So really, no one can predict where these rocks are in the river because the river's so fast. If you've ever been to Niagara Falls and seen the Niagara River, propeller hits the rock. The engine makes an awful sound. They end up having to turn it off because it's just busted. There's no anchor and no rescue line on this boat. And so now it's just heading to the rapids on its own. I'm like, really? Who planned this trip? Why do we not have an anchor? Why do we not have rescue lines? Seems very not responsible.
I don't think the uncle was a good captain.
Not a good cat. I don't
know.
No. And unfortunately, it's not going to end well in terms of what happens to Honeycutt. But Roger does remember the family friend Honeycutt telling his older sister to get a life jacket on. So she didn't have the life jacket on, but he yells at her to put it on. So he puts it on, waves are slamming the boat, it fills with water, it capsizes, everyone is in the rapids now, and they all kind of lose track of each other. And Woodward remembers seeing people running along the side of the river trying to grab his sister to pull her to safety. And he's further out in the middle of the river.
Yeah, because they still got birthday cake to go eat.
They got birthday cake. They got presents to open. And he is quoted as saying he remembers a moment where he figured he was going to die. I'm like, I can't even imagine being this little kid. And you're like, well, I guess this is it. And he thought about his parents, and he said he thought about his dog and his toys. And then he's quoted as saying it felt like he was floating in a cloud. He's enveloped in mist, and he made the 167-foot drop into the lower river. And as he hit the water, everything went dark before his life jacket then brought him up to the surface. And one of the Maid of the Mist boats was in the bottom. If you've ever been to Niagara Falls, there's, boats.
The boat tours, right.
Yeah. And one of the boats comes over, and they try 3 times battling the choppy water before they can finally pull him in. They latch onto one of the rings on his life vest. They pull him up. And his sister was actually grabbed. She was luckily grabbed by a man along the water's edge. Sadly, Rick Honeycutt perished in the falls. When he went over, he didn't survive.
No.
So
That's
it did not end well. It was really unfortunate. The notoriety, though, of surviving the falls was huge. His family was hounded by the press and by people wanting to talk to him about it. And it actually got so bad that they ended up moving to Niagara Falls, New York in 1960. But then they had to leave 2 years later due to all this publicity. And so they had moved once, and then they had to move again. And do you know where they moved to, Mike?
Somewhere where there wasn't water?
No, but that would have been a good guess. They end up going to Lakeland, Florida. I have no idea where that is in relation to you.
It's about depending on this is the thing. Okay, so
right, we talked about traffic in Florida.
Yeah, so Lakeland is halfway-ish between Orlando and Tampa. It's a little bit closer to the Tampa side, but it's, depending on traffic, 45, 55 minutes or so.
So not like a super distance away from you.
Yeah, it's very, very. I can get there, again, depending on time of day. Yeah,
fairly easily. When they moved there, the family was like, yo, we're not talking about this. Nobody needs to know who you are or what happened to you as a child.
The first rule about Fight Club is you don't talk about Fight Club. The first rule of the Niagara Falls Club is you don't talk about the Niagara Falls Club.
No, you don't. Survivors don't talk about it. And it got to the point where his parents didn't even want he and his sister to talk about their shared experience. So it was just like totally hushed. You just never talked about it. And decades later, he ends up going back to Niagara Falls as an adult to film a documentary about it. And he meets the nurse who originally helped him in the hospital once they brought him to the hospital. And there's a really, really famous photo of him drinking from a juice box with the nurse in the photo. And this same nurse is the one that actually said it's healthy and normal to talk about tragedies that happen to you. This is how you get through it. And so he finally spoke to his sister about it. And he learned that the man who reached through the guardrail to grab her missed on his first attempt. And then there was a desperate second attempt, and she managed to grab onto his thumb. And he pulled her out of the river by his thumb.
Wow.
Or she likely would have died along with Honeycutt. Yeah. So pretty crazy. It's, I can't imagine. Your thumb's like what, an inch? Just an inch away from losing your life?
Yeah.
And the strength you'd have to have.
Yeah. Well, and just even the force of it, because granted, she's a kid, but she's gonna hold on to that with everything she has. I mean, kind of lucky.
Yeah.
Between the
17-year-old girl, right? So you're not just a little tiny speck of a thing.
But between her strength and gripping and the rushing of the water, kind of surprised he didn't break his thumb.
Yeah. Oh, I'm sure it was pretty darn bruised.
Yeah.
But 5 decades later, only 2 other people have actually survived an unaided plunge, as they call it, over the falls. Kirk Jones in 2003 and an unidentified man in 2009. Just some guy fell in the river, got out, and they never found out his identity.
Maybe it was the Poe toaster that we discussed. Maybe that's what happened to him.
So if you are the unidentified man that went over Niagara Falls in 2009 and you happen to be listening to our show, the authorities would just like to know who you are and add you to the record book.
Yes. I'd like to have a documentation that you survived.
Yeah. Well, and Niagara Falls is really cool. I never got to go on the Maid of the Mist boat tour when I was like, I think 8 or 9 when my parents took me. And I was someone who grew up on the East Coast. It's kind of funny. I was actually kind of scared of boats for a long time. So we just never did it. I would do it. That would be on the bucket list of things to do.
But you don't want to go over it in a barrel.
I don't want to go over it in a barrel.
But you'll go under it in a boat.
Yeah. And you get that cool blue or yellow rain slicker.
Yeah.
You get real wet. That's all I know. I'll bring a change of clothing if you're going to visit.
You're gonna get wet on that ride for sure. Yeah, when I go to the theme parks, I'm not like a big water ride guy because I don't like walking around being wet all day.
Yeah, no. Especially in Florida with humidity.
Yeah, like I see
No.
people that do it. They're like, "Oh, it cools you off." I'm like, "No, that's just gonna
No.
make me wet and miserable the rest of the day. I'm good. If I want to cool off, I'm gonna go inside a store or a restaurant."
Yeah. You're going to have that awful M word attached to you all day.
Yes.
The word that we shall not say because people are either fine with it or just utterly disgusted.
Moist.
No.
I'll say it. I don't
I
care.
tried, people. I tried.
I don't get what the hang up on this stupid word is. Like,
Oh, I've done research on it because Andy, my sister, this is a word she absolutely hates. And I've gone through lists of words, and basically there's something that goes on in your brain. So normally, if you think of that word, you either think of something disgusting or you think of something delicious like cake, right?
Yeah.
I'm in the delicious category. I hear that word and I'm like, ooh, yum. People who don't like this word, something happens in your brain where the messages are crossed and you feel and think both things at the same time. So you're just like grossed out.
You know what word I can't stand?
What?
Gorgeous.
Gorgeous? Really?
Yes, I hate that word.
Why?
I had a friend, I guess, that used it so much I just got tired of hearing it. But like, it's
But
not.
it doesn't ick you out.
No, it doesn't ick me out, but it's just not a pleasant sounding word. Like gorge. It's like, okay, a gorge is like a giant,
Like
hole.
engorged.
Right.
Yeah.
Like it's not like beautiful, lovely. These things sound nice. Gorgeous. Ugh.
I was going to say there's certain words I don't like. Scientifically, I know the word like fetus is an appropriate term to use when talking about the development of a baby.
Yeah.
But I hate that word. It really icks me out. I can't handle it.
Yeah.
So it's funny words. I love.
Yeah. We have our it's like numbers. Everybody has favorite numbers,
What's yours?
I have a few.
Yeah.
I like the number 4. I like the number 29. I like 3. I like
3 is one of mine.
7. I have a few. It just kind of depends.
My mom got mad at me the other day because there was something online about drawing numbers for an award or something, like a prize. And she's like, you took my number. And it's because I put specific birthdays, right? And so 8 is her favorite number and her birthday. And so you took it. I'm like, well, I like that number. That number makes me think of you.
Well, if you win with that number, you need to give her the prize because you stole her number.
We could share.
Okay. Well, something we all got to share in, well, at least here in America, I don't know how many Canadians shared in this moment with us, was July 10th, 1999. And this was the final for the 1999 FIFA Women's World Cup between the United States and China. So this was, and it still is, I think, one of the absolute most iconic moments I still think it is the most iconic moment in women's sports in America because this is the moment that like cements soccer as a sport in America, especially to girls. And you see that now with the success that our women have now in soccer, winning World Cups, which we've obviously won the last 2. And that's the generation that grew up watching this game in 1999. And so you can make the case that without this game, we don't have the success that we have now. Now our men's soccer, that's a different story. But so it
is harder to get awareness and funding for female sports.
Right.
So you're probably right. Without this moment, it's not going to have the momentum going forward.
Exactly. So there was 90,185 people in the Rose Bowl that day for the game, which was a world record for attendance for a women's sporting event. The game was 0-0 at the end of regulation. They played 2 overtime periods. They were still tied. So the game goes to a shootout in which the U.S. winds up winning 5-4. So,
so close.
So if you don't follow soccer, basically, so it comes down to penalty kicks. You have 5 rounds, and one team kicks, then the other team responds, then the first team kicks, so on and so forth. So China kicked and scored. U.S. kicked and scored. So it's 1-1. Then it was 2-2. Then in the third round, the Chinese player missed. So now the U.S. has a chance to take the lead. So they kick. So now it's 3-2 at the end of the third round. You go to the fourth round, kick. You go to the fifth round, the Chinese player kicks. So now it's 4-4.
Whoa.
And Brandi Chastain comes up to kick. Now, there's a lot of pressure. And at the same time, there's no pressure because you can't lose if you miss, but you can win.
Right.
Because if she missed, it's 4-4, and then they would
go one more kicker.
Right. They would go to the next. Right. But she kicks the goal and scores. And this is the iconic moment where during the big celebration, she rips her jersey off and she's out there, in her sports bra. And that's what's on Sports Illustrated and all the headlines and everything. And it was just, I remember watching this game, and it was a great game. And it was, it's, like I said, the most iconic women's sports moment, I think, that I could think of. And I would guess probably on the level of the 1980 U.S. hockey team beating Russia in the Miracle on Ice. Like, I think it's that significant of a sports moment. Yeah. Especially on a national level. I mean, there are different iconic sports moments involving specific teams. Like, when the Boston Red Sox finally won a World Series in 2004, breaking the curse of the Bambino and all that. But
that was crazy too.
Yeah, or even when the Cubs finally won a World Series in 2016. But when it's on a national level, there's a different sense of pride to it.
Yeah,
and
it's like on being with the Olympics, right? And when Canada finally won like a gold medal on Canadian soil.
Yeah, I remember that 2010. Thanks.
Yep. I'm sorry, but I remember how people were trying to like shame her for taking her jersey off.
Yeah,
and it's like, are you give me a break? She just won, and like. Soccer is a grueling game. Like, you are running back and forth. You're sweaty. You're tired. And now she's euphoric having gotten this kick in.
Yeah. And, that was just real emotion. I mean, she's on such a high. She's not even thinking what she's doing, just.
Well, and it's not like she was scandalous. Oh my goodness. She was wearing an appropriate sport equipment.
Right. Yeah, I want to give her crap, but that gave the U.S. their second World Cup. Of course, we've went on to win a couple more since then. The final that game in 1999 was averaged just under 18 million viewers, and at one point later in the game, as the game drew to an end, it's believed that about 40 million people were watching at some point. So it's like you have your total viewership that you average for all the different quarter hours together, but like the game peaked. And this happens with the Super Bowl. You might have 111 million people watching it, but the game might peak at some point during, with like 120 million, maybe watch the halftime or something. It doesn't count as the official rating for it, but yeah.
Yeah. Soccer is pretty big around here, so like we were definitely watching it.
Yeah,
I remember.
So so it was an iconic moment in sports, and I believe you have an iconic book to talk to us about.
An iconic American book. So I couldn't pass up the opportunity to talk about this when I saw it pop up in the timeline. July 11th, 1960, Harper Lee is going to, of course, publish her very famous novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. So Nell Harper Lee, born April 28th, 1926, passed away February 19th, 2016. Of course, American novelist, best known for her 1960 novel, To Kill a Mockingbird. It's going to win a Pulitzer Prize the next year and become obviously a classic that's taught all over the world. I mean, I believe specifically it's taught in American and Canadian schools.
Yeah.
But it's iconic. It's all over the world that people have heard this story and have been used in novel studies forever. So despite dealing with obviously serious issues of rape and racial inequality, the novel is renowned for its warmth and humor. That's kind of, people realize, you're going through these really serious moments in the book,
right?
But it really is about heartwarming and like the goodness of people. And Atticus Finch, the narrator's father, is going to serve as a moral hero for many readers and, the model for integrity for lawyers for years. The historian Joseph Espino explains that in the 20th century, To Kill a Mockingbird is probably the most widely read book dealing with race in America, and its main character, Atticus Finch, is the most endearing fictional image of racial heroism. which I mean, I would agree. And I know when her second book was released, oh shoot, why am I drawing a blank on the name now? Like I was just thinking about it before we started. Something Postman, isn't it?
The sequel?
Yeah.
I'm glad you're looking it up because I was going to ask you about the sequel. To Kill the Postman, who didn't bring me my shit. Remind me when
Go set a Watchman.
Remind me. I have a post office story for you after this.
A post office? Okay. So we'll go back.
Off air.
Off air.
Yep.
We'll
so
go
just
back to
wherever you want to pick it up from.
where was I? Shit, I don't even. Okay. So we'll say the most endearing fictional image of Rachel heroism. Okay. So I know when her sequel came out, Go Set a Watchman, that people were really concerned by it because of how Atticus was portrayed. Obviously, he's supposed to be, or it's supposed to be from the main character, Scout's recollection now as no longer being a young girl. She's now an adult looking through the world through adult lenses. And I personally haven't read it. I was just, a little heartbroken by how the characters were then portrayed. And also, I have a really difficult time considering there was a lot of controversy about her family pushing for the release of the second book, which was actually written before To Kill a Mockingbird. And you can see a lot of her notes in the first manuscript being used in the sequel technically, and then being used in To Kill a Mockingbird. And I don't know, I didn't have the heart in me to read it yet, but my mom read it all in one sitting. And then she just kind of set it down, and you could just see that she was a little sad about it all. It's like, oh.
I haven't read the sequel, so.
Yeah. So I'll get on that at one point. But I wanted to give you a few kind of interesting facts about the book. So
please do.
I have 3. So the book was almost actually called Atticus, right?
Okay.
However, Lee decided
makes sense.
against it. Yeah, right. He's such an important part of the book.
Right.
But she was worried then that it would focus only on one character. And she said the story was so much more
than a character.
Atticus.
Yeah, I can get that. Okay.
Now, her full name, obviously, when I said it at the beginning of the segment, is Nell Harper Lee, right? Her first name is the backward spelling of Ellen, which was her grandmother's name. So already her parents are given kind of an interesting twist. And it's pronounced Nell rather than Nellie. So it does look like Nellie.
Yeah.
Right? While friends and loved ones often would call her Nell, she actually decided to publish her name under Harper Lee because she didn't want people to mispronounce her first name.
Well, that and Harper really is kind of, especially for then, sort of a unisex name. Like I can't necessarily off the top of my head tell you another famous Harper that I could think of, but if I just saw it, I wouldn't go, oh,
that's a girl, or that's a boy, or whatever.
Like, I would think, okay, Trish, I would think that's a girl. I don't think, at least off the top of my head, I can think of a man named Trish.
No.
Not saying there's not one.
It's not like Leslie used to be a boy's name and is now much more a girl's name.
Right.
Ashley, same thing. I grew up with lots of male Ashleys, which is unusual, I guess, for the rest of North America. I did know one girl named Joel, which was very unusual, and one girl named Kevin. But those are definitely more masculine sounding names, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Yeah. But a lot of female writers would use this, right, as a way of getting more readership, because there was always the whole stigma like, will boys read books written by girls?
Yeah. No, I get that. So,
I love the name Harper. The only other Harper, though, I think of is Stephen Harper, which was one of Canada's
prime ministers. Right. And that's a last name.
That's a last name. But I do like the name Harper.
Yeah. It's a good name. I didn't mean it that way.
Yeah, you're right, though. It does allow her to kind of, people could be like, oh, maybe it's a male writer, maybe it's a female writer.
Just read the book.
Just read the book. It's a good book, regardless of who wrote it.
Right.
She wrote very, very slowly. I did not know this about her, but she was a methodical writer, and she would spend about 6 to 12 hours a day sitting and writing to produce 1 page a day.
Yeah, that's it's going to take you a while to write a book if you're writing at that pace.
Going to take you a while. She based Atticus on her father, who was also a lawyer and who actually defended 2 African-American men accused of murder. And so she saw firsthand kind of the racial inequalities that was happening at this time period in American history. And although he actually lost the case, the wisdom and the experience that he imparted on his daughter clearly left their mark. 40 million copies of this book have been sold.
Wow.
That's a lot.
That's a lot.
And then 2 years later, of course, the movie came out and it made 6 times more the budget. And it won 3 Academy Awards, including Best Actor for Gregory Peck, Best Screenplay, and Best Art Direction for a Black and White Film. And it was nominated for 8 total, including Best Picture, but of course it didn't win.
Yeah.
Lots of money and exposure. And I would argue that 1962 movie is one of the most iconic movies in American history.
Oh, sure. Like, I think it's even on the American Film Institute's 100 greatest movies list. I don't know that it is, but it has to be on there, I would think. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, I guess this story is probably due for an update since Hollywood is rehashing so many
because
movies.
we don't have any new original ideas anymore.
No. But I don't know, I'd be sad. It's so good the way it is.
Some things just don't need to be remade.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. But we'll remake this show next week for you. Well,
right?
not this one. It'll be different, but there'll
be new facts, new trivia moments,
and all that fun stuff. But thanks for making it to the end of the episode. So you get rewarded with knowing another episode happening next week. And if you didn't make it to the end, well, you don't know. This could be the last episode.
Yeah.
But if you didn't make it to the end, you probably don't care anyway. So go do something stupid. I don't know. I got nothing for you.
You got nothing. It's summertime. Our brains are turned on.
Exactly. but we'll be back here next week. Trish, do the thing.
So if you have any questions, concerns, queries, or freakouts, you can reach us on Anchor. You can leave us a voicemail and we can include you in the show. You can reach us at Gmail. So the Time Machine with Trish and Mike at gmail.com. You can see us on Instagram, Time Machine with Trish and Mike. Put us in the Google machine and find us on YouTube. And please hit subscribe. Start liking those videos so our name will actually show up on that YouTube channel.
Yes, so then we can actually get like the whole youtube.com/Time Machine with Trish and Mike. But we gotta have more subscribers before we're like legitimized or whatever. Anyway, regardless, we'll catch you next week right here on the Time Machine.